Hey, this is Frank Nieto with Vision Quest Auto, and today we're going to be reviewing the Mazda 3 Hatchback. And I almost called that the hot hatchback because honestly, that's what this is. This is a hot hatchback. It is a car that harkens back to the 70s and 80s when hot hatchbacks were all the rage, but it also looks towards the future. Let's get to it. All right, so we're gonna go over here with the walkthrough, and as you can see, this has got that classic Mazda styling. It is slightly more aggressive if you're familiar with Mazda's design cues. You know, this aggressiveness here, because it's very much needing to get that engine cooled, so it's very much more open than what you'd find in some other Mazdas. You've also got your front splitter. It's a very much a low slung car. It's like, especially even for someone like me who's driven a lot of sports cars, this is even lower than what I'm somewhat used to be honest. But it's a good thing. This has made it fantastic for handling wise. It's got these black rims, really nice look. Like I said, this is an understated but attractive and sporty look to it. It does have this hatchback spoiler, and you know, this is one of those ones that doesn't look that big, but when you get up close, I mean, look at that. That's actually a pretty substantial spoiler. It is not a Honda Civic Type R type of spoiler, which is massive, and some might even say over the top, you know. But this is right there with that. As you can tell, it's an all-wheel drive car. To unlock that one, as you can tell, the thing that I really like about this is, one of the things I really like, I should say, is how attractive and luxurious, you know, near luxury is one of the things that people say a lot about Mazdas, and this very much has that similar design cue. You know, I don't think this is leather, but it's leather-like. It has a great feel, very nice to the touch. This is a rubberized kind of feel, but it has, you know, really something nice to it. It's got a really good feel. It wouldn't be out of place in a BMW 2 Series or even a 3 Series, you know, when you're looking at some of the lower trims. This is a nice feel. Feels great when you have your arm on it. Of course, it's got the Bose speakers, which are very great sounding, to be honest. You know, you got your leather interior here. It's got a regular shifter, which I appreciate, with a nice boot. There's no gimmicks with this shifter at all. One of the things that's cool about it, besides just being that shifter, is there's no stop start. It does have auto hold, you can see right here, but it doesn't have stop start, which again I appreciate because I'm not a big fan of that. It does have a sport setting, but it doesn't have any other things. There's not a slick, you know, rain. There's not gravel. It does have all-wheel drive, but it doesn't go in for any of those other things. You know what kind of car you're getting into when you get into this. Normal mode will be able to get you through snow and rain as best as possible. Sport mode is what you're going to want for your fun factors. Even though with all-wheel drive, this car is probably going to struggle in snow just because of how low to the ground it is. You're really going to need to have clear roads. You know, this probably do pretty well on slick roads, but I think that this is clearly a car that has the all-wheel drive there for the sport aspect, to be able to really road grip, get that torque and acceleration going, more than a car that has all-wheel drive for the purposes of being able to, you know, drive in bad weather. It also has a charging pad that's pretty easy to reach. One thing it doesn't have is does not have wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Here I'm gonna pop into the back just to give you an idea, and as you can see, this is pretty tight. You know, even my kids have, you know, they're younger, and they've noted that it's not the most amount of leg room. So you get teenagers or adults back here, you can certainly fit them in a pinch, but I think for the most part, this back seat is just that, for a pinch or for some cargo. If you're a single person with this car, this will do great for you. You know, most of the time you'd probably drop these
these rear seats for even more cargo space than you would say for, you know, passengers. But, you know, if you're in a city and you just need to drive people a couple blocks, this isn't a bad fit. You know, but long road trips, this is not going to be ideal. There are no vents. That's becoming increasingly more the case for non-family vehicles. There are no, you know, people back here can't really adjust. There's no, you know, again, this isn't made to have a lot of passengers. They're not going to be able to do much when they're back here except just wait to get out. Cargo space is a lot more interesting. There is no automatic lift gate, but yeah, this is pretty substantial. As you can tell, I've got some of my recording and photography equipment, you know, bags back here, and it's, you know, it's not taking up much room. They don't take up too much room, but this is a pretty good amount of storage space. Like, you'd be able to fit, you know, bags for 2 people for sure, just with this, without dropping those rear seats. You know, weekend trip away, or even a week away, to be honest, you'd be able to fit 2 pretty substantial bags, I think, back here. If you put them on top of each other, you put the seats down, you'd have even more space. So there's a good amount of room back here. I want to note this: the air conditioning in this car is really, really strong. You know, it's, especially on auto, you know, mode, it's more aggressive than you might think. And again, that's a good or a bad thing. I've had a really, really strong air conditioning unit, so major thumbs up there to Mazda for that. Here, before we get to our Fat Guy in Little Coat award, is the runner-up. You know, something that I considered before this, as far as being that Fat Guy in Little Coat award, something that doesn't really fit in this car. But I decided it's just more of a quirk than a negative, to be honest. It could be more of a negative depending on your size, and that is this touchscreen. Okay, so this is a touchscreen, and that is newer for Mazdas. Mazdas have for years used these things, these control dials. This still uses this control dial, and in fact, I would recommend using this dial more than I would the touchscreen, because this touchscreen, again, you know, I like to have more leg space, so I'm not really up here. This takes longer reach than when I'm driving to operate. I actually prefer, when I'm driving, to use the dial. Pretty cool to use, I think, very easy, but the touchscreen is there, and it's nice to have for a pinch. For years, Mazda had that touchscreen not usable. They didn't have it as a touchscreen. When they did, it was blocked, it was locked out when you were driving. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I do appreciate that, but I would just, my own personal thing, I would recommend using this. This seems to be a much better fit for me. You also have your volume knob. Yeah, of course, you can move this. So you have your volume, you can use forwarding, pausing, everything right through this. So again, this is really intuitive. If you want to hop into your different settings to do your menus, you can just use this. So this is a really nice feature. This looks very much old school, like it's got analog displays, but if you notice right here and right here, your digital displays, and they're pretty useful. It's actually kind of gives you a cooler look, because I think they blend in and they have that old school kind of look, that analog look, even though they are digital. This tells you how many miles you have, how full your tank is, all there in one little touch, which I love. Okay, you know, that's not always the case. As you can see, it tells me I have 180 miles to go on this tank. It tells me the temperature, 79 degrees outside right now, and it's giving me about how much of that tank is left. So a lot of information in just one quick display. Similarly, over here, you know, you have your total mileage. This has got 5,365 miles on it. You know, that Mazda's put on this as a review car. So a lot of us auto reviewers and journalists have been putting some mileage on this. So it's got that, but then you can also see what this is this is telling you what mileage you've been getting. So I've been getting probably, what, 34 miles to the gallon or so in this car in my trip. That does change a lot. So when I first had this, honestly, this was over 40s. This trip, I've been doing a little bit more. It's been a shorter run. I've actually also had the engine on, so that's a little bit lower. When I was just doing some straight highway, it was getting about 40. That 80 is Probably something that you're really not going to get to, but who knows? I think that's more aspirational for Mazda than it is realistic, but hey, it's out there. The rest of these displays are analog. I think they're quite useful to use. There are some more digital little, displays where, here, I'll show you that P will change. So now I'm in reverse. I'm in neutral, So it tells you what gear you're in. You can see if you have your sensing, if you're in cruise control. So there are some digital aspects to this, even though it's got that analog look. This also has a head-up display. Um, it's very useful. It'll actually also tell you, of course, you can't really see the display with cameras, but this will tell you not just your speed, it'll give you your directions if you have your navigation on. That can also be for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And it'll tell you, you can turn it on and off. I have it on because I like it. It'll tell you any road signs coming up. So if you're approaching a stop sign, it'll tell you a stop sign's approaching. If you're approaching a yield sign, it'll tell you a yield sign. Just different things. It's pretty helpful. This also, despite the size, I'm kind of surprised, to be honest. I'm going to show you this. This has got a 360 camera on it. Hatchbacks generally aren't really known for it, and this is incredibly clear. Like, that is a crystal clear display. I'm not sure if this is 4K or if it's just 1080, but it is really, really nice, and I want to point that out for Mazda. They did a fantastic job with these cameras. Not always the case, and with something so small, it's really impressive because a lot of time these cameras get dirty and everything, and this has just been really cool. It's already rained out here too, to be honest. So really impressed with this car overall. Every car has to have something that's just there. This is it. I didn't realize this until my kids pointed this out, but when you slide this back, it's suddenly sliding right at you. There's not a lot of leg room here as it is, and now you've got this. Now, when you had this slid up, plenty of room. It's sneaky. It's a sneaky stealth attack on your passengers' knees if they're back here. And it is a big deal because, as you can see, I have my phone up there. If I want to be able to operate the plug, give it a little bit more room, if I need to get something from that center console, I can't just lift this up. This will lift up, but it's got to slide back and then lift up, okay? So the fact that I have to slide it back is an unfortunate thing. The fact that I have to slide that back to get in there means that every time that I have to do that, if I have passengers, they've got to watch their knees. Now, it does have a soft touch, but still, it is a something coming at your knees. So that's my fat guy in a little coat award, named after the great Chris Farley. Fat guy in little coat. This thing.
They're tremendous handling. That's their calling card. But the thing that also surprises me about this car is honestly how quick it is. This is a really, this isn't known for a ton of engine power, and yet it has substantial pickup. I do not want for power in any situation. It just feels really great at all times. It can coast, it can, accelerate, it can give you any kind of feeling that you want. This is a great car when it comes to all-around performance. And I think that's something that sometimes people sleep on a little bit with the Mazda 3 hatchback is how great a sports car it is. So I'm going to rate this on, because of its size, the small athlete scale. And there are a number of great small athletes in the world. So, of course, there's guys like a Pedro Martinez who dominated or was one of the most dominating pitchers in baseball for about a decade and was not a tall pitcher, was not a really muscular pitcher. This came at a time when guys thought of the prototype of a pitcher as being like a Randy Johnson, not necessarily as tall as Randy, but if they're going to be lanky, they should be really tall, and if they're not lanky, they should be pretty ripped, you know. And that wasn't the case with Pedro. Pedro came out and he dominated batters, with arm speed, of course, but also just wiliness, and was able to compete. And I think that surprised a lot of people. Um, but for me, that's not the athlete that I'm thinking of for this car. The athlete that I'm thinking of is Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson, didn't come out there. He wasn't boastful the way that other boxers were. I mean, he was boastful in his own ways, but guys like Muhammad Ali would come out straight up and tell you, or a Floyd Mayweather tell you that they're the best ever. Mike didn't do that. Mike was like, I'm going to beat you, and I've got more power than you. I've got more speed than you. I'm just coming right for you. I think that's something that's similar with the Mazda 3 hatchback. It's a car that comes right at you. It doesn't mess around. It's I don't want to say it's no frills because I don't think that's accurate. It does have frills, but it's not necessarily going to overwhelm you with style the way that a Velociter N will, or some BMWs, or even the Type R, the Honda Civic Type R will. This is a car that's going to be a little more understated, both interior and exterior wise. This is a car that's going to be very much about the performance, but again, not over the top performance. That's, to me, it's a car that's going to come right at you, and it's going to hit you the way that a Mike Tyson would just come right out and hit you. So that's where I land on this. All right, so that does it for this week. But before we wrap up, I do want to just point out, because I think that this is an interesting perspective. I'm not the largest person around, but I do feel like when I looked at how I looked next to this car when I was just setting up the shots, that I really feel like a giant, or I look like a giant kind of compared to this car. And I think that's another thing that people forget about hot hatchbacks is just, frankly, they're kind of cute factor, their fun factor. This is a smaller vehicle. This is not an intimidating vehicle. Um, so that's just something to consider if you're looking at a hot hatchback, is honestly just how small this is. It's worth considering there. But wanted to mention that before we wrap things up. But we are wrapping things up, and I want to thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Of course, we're on Twitter X, or Twitter X, formerly known as Twitter. We're also on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. So you can find us under Vision Quest Auto under most places, or Vision Quest A in the case of Twitter X. And we'll catch you around next time.